Greetings, friends, and welcome to OCDTV, a show where us nerds sit around and talk about a bunch of nerdy-ass stuff. I am your host, The Game, Keith Martin, and with me tonight from the New Classics Improv Company is Maxie Davidson.
Hello.
And producer extraordinaire, Jamie Horton. Tonight we're going to the dark side. We are talking Scum and Villainy. And no, we aren't talking about Washington, D.C.
Oh.
So, tonight we're talking about villains from movies and literature.
Yes.
We're going to start off with something pretty simple, just your favorite villains.
Why don't you go first?
Okay.
Oh, she brought notes.
Maxie brought notes.
Because I was like, oh, well, here's something I think should be added to.
I'm totally
like the
winging it.
AFI list. Are we including like movie monsters too? Or just
Include
like...
whatever you want. We're
Okay.
talking it all.
All right. I'll say, and it's actually on the AFI movie list, the Xenomorph from Alien.
I don't need your list.
Okay, fine, don't take my list, I don't care.
The Xenomorph, though.
Yeah,
I like the
that's a
Xenomorph,
good
that's
pick.
my favorite movie monster.
Yeah.
Xenomorph. I love Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. Bad word, sorry.
That's okay.
Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. I think that's a very good movie villain. And one of my favorites, one of the newer ones, Immortan Joe from Mad Max Fury Road. I think that's a very good movie villain.
You list off a few movies of that I've never even seen. That's fine, though. The Xenomorph, though. I'm all about the
I
Xenomorph.
like the
Love
Xenomorph.
those first two Alien movies.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Aliens was wonderful. I love that movie.
And J canon, which is Jamie canon, which is the only canon that
really
That matters.
really matters. Right. There's only aliens. Aliens. Alien and aliens. There's
No
no Prometheus.
resurrection.
There's no
None of that. Yeah.
There's no 3. There's no Alien versus Predator.
No, just
It's all. It's fun.
game
but
over,
it's
man. It's game over.
rubbish, yeah. I can just have a character, right?
Yeah, whatever
okay,
you want,
like
man.
I'm gonna go with the Joker.
The Joker.
I
good
think
one.
because he's so versatile
Which one?
as a villain. Well, that's the thing. I'm just going to go with the character
Oh,
of the
the
Joker.
character in
Because it
general.
can be interpreted a few different ways.
That's true.
Jack Nicholson's
Right.
portrayal as a flamboyant gangster, like
Right.
that really works. And Cesar Romero's Joker as like a party clown gone
Yeah,
criminal.
right.
And he-
Painted over the mustache.
it's great. It actually hints at the real person behind
Right,
it too.
yeah.
So it gives the character a weird kind of depth. And also Heath Ledger's Joker,
Right.
who is like
Just
a brilliant anarchist.
Right.
I guess the way you could describe it.
Mark
Me
Hamill.
personally, I'm gonna go with two different things, because her movie monster idea kind of sparked my juices there for the greatest movie monster of all time, Godzilla.
Is Godzilla a villain?
In 1954, Godzilla he is.
History,
Well, he's a force
proved,
of nature. He's not a villain. He's a force of nature.
history has proved again and again how nature points out the folly of man. Godzilla.
Godzilla. But yeah, I suppose Gojira 1954. But I guess he's not really a villain per se. He's a force of nature.
I think that kind of movie fits the plot device of man versus nature.
Nature, right.
And Godzilla as a force of nature.
Right.
Or even maybe like a divine retribution kind of
Yeah.
thing, like where he's punishing mankind for his own hubris.
Right. Yep, that's good. And then I have to go with one of the most iconic villains in all of cinema. The guy who's standing in front of
I
me
know,
here on the
since
desk.
This guy?
Darth Vader.
Darth
Yeah.
Vader.
The doomed hero.
Yeah, well, kinda, if you pay attention to anything that happened before, you hope.
Well, we know even
We know of Anakin,
we
that's
even
true.
if there were no prequels, which they're so easy to ignore, even if we didn't have those, at least we would know that he started out as a hero from
Right. From
what
the dialogue.
briefly
Right.
Obi-Wan says of him.
Right, yes.
But I mean, without the prequels, we wouldn't know that he didn't like sand. So
That's
I
true.
mean,
But who does?
It's
Which
in
is
everywhere.
the perfect place to hide your son.
what?
A place that you'll never go to. You'll never go back there. He hates
He
sand.
hates sand. It gets
He's
in
never
everywhere.
going to go back to Tatooine. He hates sand.
Right.
What did I read?
Obi-Wan
I saw
and
something
Yoda, very
that actually had a
wise.
good reason why it was the perfect place to hide him, was because the emotional damage from Tatooine, Vader would avoid that place just because it was painful for him
triggered
to
for
go
him.
there. You know, he would avoid it.
Right.
You know, I read that somewhere. I don't remember.
That makes sense.
Obviously, it's not real canon because
Well,
Lucas didn't think of that for sure.
well, sometimes the fans were thinking of more clever things than
Yes,
Lucas was.
yes. I know I filled in many a blank that I go, no, that has to be it.
Just like we were doing with Snoke. Who is Snoke?
We're
Doesn't
not,
matter who he
yeah,
is.
we're not going to know who Snoke is.
My
'cause
name is Supreme Leader. It doesn't matter what your name is.
Or Ray's parents. But we're getting off track.
Yes. We're getting way off track there. Yeah, so I think my favorite villain obviously is Vader. I mean, he's just, you know, the icon there, you know, big, you know, black, the menacing voice, you know.
Even the imagery.
Right.
Like if you just had all the Star Wars characters lined up before you, you would know which one's the villain.
Right.
Or villains if you had the Emperor there,
Right.
who's dressed like an evil wizard.
Right, yeah, he's in
Like
the black
classical,
and looking all
mythology,
wrinkly.
so,
And yeah. So, what movies do you think are defined by their villain more than their hero? I mean, there are some movies out there that you just know they are defined by the villain rather than a protagonist or a hero.
Well, certainly a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
I mean,
Freddy
you
Krueger.
can name like maybe a handful of protagonists, but yeah, those movies are about Freddy Krueger. Friday the 13th, they're about Jason Voorhees. Halloween movies are about Michael Myers. Michael Myers.
Michael
Michael
Myers.
Mike Myers is a totally different guy.
That's a government name.
Yeah, and a lot of horror movies are actually named after the villain, too. Like, well, going back to literature, Dracula.
Right.
You know, Frankenstein, named after the villain. And yes, I understand that Frankenstein, the
It's-
scientist, is the villain of the story.
yes,
Frankenstein's monster,
Yeah.
who is the main.
Oh,
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You have the name of the hero of the story and the villain in one. Brilliant.
Alien.
alien. The villain is the alien.
Alien.
Predator.
Predator.
Oh,
Alien versus Predator.
Which 2 for 1. Ah.
Whoever wins, we lose.
Yeah, we lost everything.
It. Well, his name
Oh,
is
his name is
Pennywise.
Pennywise the
but
clown.
He is the cosmic force in the universe that feeds off fear and brings destruction.
But in the book,
Cthulhu.
it's explained that
Yes. Right.
He is an
Well, he's a
aspect
cosmic horror.
Yeah, he is an aspect of the great Cthulhu.
even though in the book, I think it's explained that that Pennywise was an alien,
Not an alien.
right? Not an alien?
No, I don't know.
That he came like down years ago. It was through like the ritual of Chud that they find out that he was an alien.
And
but
his
it's
cosmic,
Cannibalistic underground dweller.
and the cosmic protagonist of that story is a giant cosmic turtle. So,
Yeah.
yeah. It's an interesting mythology that
Gamera.
Stephen King wrote. Yes. Yeah, it reads a lot like a crazy person wrote it, and even Stephen King
A
can't remember.
crazy person wrote it.
Stephen
Well, he was,
King,
like, drunk the
to
whole
this
time
day,
he
right,
wrote
he
it.
doesn't remember a lot of the writing process that went into it because he was just completely
was
hammered
blackout drunk,
the whole
right.
time, right?
And the whole thing is just like a blackout. It's just like this memory, then this memory, and oh, we're in the past. Oh, no, we're going to cut to the future. And
It's a bunch of very strange, disturbing ideas cobbled together.
yes.
So, villains that have translated well from, say, literature or even folklore
Okay.
into film.
Like vampires, werewolves,
Yeah.
the
Well,
undead.
Yeah,
in
what are some
general.
of the better portrayed? Ones that were done well
Okay.
versus ones that were crap.
Well, a lot of great villains actually follow the Lucifer archetype, where they
I was
start
just
off as a hero, just like Mr. Anakin
Like-
Skywalker,
yeah, like Anakin.
and are corrupted, either by an outside influence or by their own hubris.
By their own failings, right?
Right. Their own sense of entitlement. You know. So I think, I think a lot of great.
Or even their own insecurities. Kind of like Anakin in the sense of, you know, he felt small and weak, you know, like he couldn't control the things around him, and that's what he had to do, and I think that's what led a lot to his fall, trying to control everything around him.
And wanting to save someone other than himself led to his redemption.
Right.
And then there are the villains that are just straight up evil,
Sure.
which I personally like.
Like Emperor Palpatine. Like, there's nothing redeeming about him. We don't know anything about his backstory, really.
Yeah.
So he's not a tragic
Right.
character.
No,
he's just a straight up
he's
villain.
just plain evil.
Right. He's the voice of evil.
Yes. Same with Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men.
Okay.
He just wants to kind of like set the world on fire. There's no like rhyme or reason. Like
Heath Ledger's Joker.
yeah,
Yes. Right.
You know, some men just want to watch the world burn, right?
yeah,
Right. Yes, you have some characters that are just these psychopaths or embodiments of evil itself.
Because would you prefer a villain who dies a villain or a villain who redeems himself?
Depends on
Depends
the
on the
film.
story.
It
that
depends
you're
on the
trying to
story.
tell.
I mean, that has to serve the story more than what I like about a particular villain.
I feel like if we learned more about Palpatine, then it would overcomplicate an already complicated story.
Right. Yeah.
So it didn't need...
There's not. You don't really need to know anything about him other than he's there and he is kind of pulling the strings. But you don't really need to go too far back. I mean, in Revenge of the Sith, you had the story that he tells Anakin, which you can kind of imply that he's talking about himself.
Right.
With
The
Darth
tragedy
Plagueis.
of Darth Plagueis.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know, and the apprentice was Darth Sidious. You know, you can put two and two together and figure that out.
The way he's talking, the way he's smirking as he's telling
Right,
the story.
he's reminiscing that story, right? So you can kind of infer there that that was him.
In the actor's mind,
Yeah.
that was the reality
Yes.
of the situation.
Yeah,
Like that's what was going through in McDermott.
Yes.
Yeah, his mind as he was saying those lines. It's like,
Right.
I am talking about myself.
Right.
I am the apprentice in this story.
Right.
But it's interpretive, of course.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
But that's a great interpretation, and I like it, and that's the way it goes.
K canon.
That is K canon. That's right. That is K canon right there.
But what about like with Vader? Like how he
Well, Vader had to be redeemed because that's the arc of that story. It was, you know, the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker, which, you know, leads into the new movies where you kind of go, okay, why, you know, I mean, I love that there's more Star Wars, but it doesn't fit the narrative arc anymore. So it's kind of starting its own new narrative arc, but it's a short one. It's only 3 movies. You know, because the original idea from Lucas was, you know, the fall and redemption of Anakin Skywalker.
Right.
In his notes, anyway. You know.
Yeah, that's the way I really think about Star Wars, which is this rapidly becoming...
it was
Yeah,
becoming
the
just
show
like
is
a
becoming Star Wars all of a sudden.
Because it deals with
There are a
these
lot of
mythological
villains.
archetypes.
Yes.
So it could all go back to Star Wars.
Everything goes back to Star Wars, my friend.
I mean, of course,
Everything.
like it goes back further because it's based on folklore and mythology.
Right, yes,
and,
yes.
and religious concepts. But
Right.
They were like, Star Wars is just great, okay?
Yeah, right. Star Wars, it really like parts 4, 5, and 6. Like that is the story. I treat
Yeah.
everything else as being like interesting ancillary material.
Yeah, backfill.
It's fun for what it is, but do we need it?
No, you didn't really. We're going to switch gears a little bit, get off the Star Wars thing because, you know, even though it's awesome and I love Star Wars. Talking about villains and where most of the iconic villains come from, at least in our modern culture now, would be comic books. So some of the best comic book villains, the rogues galleries of these great stories.
I think any comic book villain that believes that he is the hero of his own story,
Right.
like Magneto,
Right.
is a great villain
Yes.
because you hate him, but at the same time you identify with him because
go.
he has a point.
He's not wrong. You know, maybe his methods are questionable, but, you know, he's not wrong about what he's saying.
Maybe even Thanos,
Yeah.
where he's, he's not really seeking power for power's sake. He's trying to impress a girl.
Right.
The personification of death itself.
Right.
Which is an interesting plot in its,
Right.
in its own
And
way.
then that's, you know, why does any man try to commit any evil? He's trying to impress a woman.
Knew it.
If you're fighting for something that you love, then it's
It can't be evil, right?
right.
Right? Right?
Easy pit to fall into.
It is. Some of my favorites, particularly from some of the newer superhero shows that are on TV now, like the stuff on the CW with Flash, Arrow, and stuff like that. One of my favorite villains from there was Captain Cold, because Wentworth
Snart is
Miller.
great.
Yeah, Wentworth Miller was wonderful just playing that. Just the way he hammed it up and just, it's great. And
Well, that's a villain that knows he is the villain of his own story.
Right.
And he's more like a hedonist. Like in the
Yes.
comic books, he was always going after supermodels and,
Right.
just liked to live well.
Yeah.
And just got a thrill from
stealing.
committing crimes.
Right.
So, him and Heatwave, of
Right,
course.
yeah,
You
and
know,
then
they make a
obviously
great
they,
team.
they kind of, with Legends of Tomorrow, they kind of flipped it and made them kind of heroes, but it was still great though. Even in that show, they're wonderful.
Zod is another.
Yes.
While we're on the subject of DC, Zod is a good example of, especially in the Zack Snyder movie, Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Like he was the hero of his own story.
Right.
You know, he was trying to save his people from annihilation.
Right.
So you can see where he's coming from in that respect.
Yeah, and he's kind of the anti-Superman, almost like almost the reverse of Superman in the sense of he's trying. Well, no, actually, I take that back.
He's compassionate in a way.
Yeah, I take that back. He's not really the opposite of Clark because he thinks he's doing what Clark is doing, but for the Kryptonians. You know, he's trying to recreate what was lost, and everyone else be damned.
This is very educational.
It is.
Are you not much of a comic book person?
No, comic book adaptation, sure.
Well, then give me
But
something.
I'm trying to think. Well, I mean,
Throw it out there.
like Batman and stuff.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
What are some
Well,
of your favorite Batman villains? Other than the Joker, because we talked about it.
Because I mean, I automatically go to the TV show.
Yeah, so do I. I love the Penguin.
Love Burgess Meredith.
Burgess
as the
Meredith,
Okay,
Penguin.
we're
Penguin.
talking about the Greenway
And
series.
then,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
of course, Catwoman,
Yeah.
Julie Newmar, and Lee Merriweather are my two favorite Catwomen. No offense to Eartha Kitt, I just mainly watch those two.
And she's, she's a villain, straight up villain, but however, she also becomes a kind of like feminist antihero.
Yeah. No, I suppose so. And then Frank Gorshin is the Riddler.
I like the concept of the Riddler character a lot, too. I think that's fun. Just, it's kind of goofy and just, and does its thing, and it's...
I love the concept of a villain that wants to give the heroes a chance. It's not the prize he's after, he loves the game.
Right.
He wants to challenge the heroes.
Right, yeah.
I mean, is that realistic? Maybe not. I don't know, people do that in real life.
Oh, sure.
There have been serial
Yeah,
killers.
they
that
bait
Who
the
left
cops,
behind,
right?
like, little
Yeah,
notes
they
and
bait the
stuff and
cops. They're
riddles.
trying to,
They don't have to do that. In fact, they're leading the police, the authorities to their hideout. They're
Oh, another really good, back to some movie villain, the movie Seven,
Yes.
right? And
Oh, right.
in Kevin Spacey's character in that,
Yes.
which is,
his
Louis
character
Chin is a seven deadly sin.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
He's becoming a kind of living embodiment of divine retribution.
Right. But he's also kind of playing the game there. He's trying to lead the, the cops there, particularly Brad Pitt's character, to become that last sin. So he's trying to goad him into following that path, which I thought, that's a great movie. I love that movie. Twisted as hell, but I like it.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
What sin was though? Because he's like, I coveted her, but I don't know which sin. Or is it,
What, covet?
or is that, I don't know what the seven deadly sins are.
Oh, you don't know the sins?
No. Sorry.
Didn't teach that in synagogue.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's as I said, that's expanded universe. It's the.
Yeah, we didn't hear that in Hebrew school. So.
I used to know these. I just
Well,
actually
I know
had to-
gluttony.
Yes.
Gluttony,
glut-
lust, wrath.
Wrath, sloth. I just had to do these
Maybe
for
it
my.
was
Actually, I just had to do these for.
Pride?
Yeah, pride.
Okay.
What was it?
Then maybe it was lust. It was lust for Gwyneth Paltrow.
No, he became. No, he was wrath.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Brad Pitt's character acting in wrath to kill Kevin Spacey's character would be embodying wrath.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, but Kevin Spacey said.
But I thought
Yeah, he had
with-
one for
I
himself. I forget what that was.
And I thought that's what it was,
Covetousness?
because that's why he did that. If we're
Or
going to
envy.
spoil
It was
anything,
envy.
maybe it
Oh,
was envy.
it was envy.
It was envy,
Right, because he envied his life.
and then
Right. So he became
Nice.
a character in his own
His own
like
story,
weird,
right.
twisted mythology. Right.
Right.
Because he monologued at the end, like, what his
Yeah,
sin was.
right, yeah.
To Brad Pitt, and then,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And that's
A villain that is trying to prove a point, a singular point. Like
Mm-hmm.
his whole existence becomes an embodiment of that. It's an interesting concept. And certainly there are some crazy people that do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
certainly. Yeah. How about not a singular villain, but like, the idea of the villainous organization. You have that like, some really over-the-top cartoony stuff, like Cobra,
I immediately
The
thought of, like,
Injustice League.
Dr. Evil.
Doctor.
Just them, like, laughing at the end.
Yeah.
Right, because, once villains realize that they can accomplish more villainy if they all combine their resources,
Right.
that's when you get like the Injustice League or
Right.
the Legion of Doom.
The Legion of Doom.
The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants.
Oh, yeah. The Evil League of Evil. Wait. I want to be an achiever like Bad Horse.
Well, Cobra is an interesting example. What were Cobra's aims?
Conquer the world.
say it in the opening narration, don't they?
Yeah.
To conquer the world.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess that's that's the ultimate goal of like an evil organization.
Like
Because they
a-
just want control.
An evil terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
Right.
All those cool like 80s cartoons, had some pretty interesting, villainous organizations.
Ooh, there's the Horde from He-Man.
Yeah,
That's right.
The Horde from
Hordak led the
No,
Horde.
She-Ra, but yeah.
Well, in Secret
Same
of the
continuity.
Sword,
Yeah, I
in
mean-
Secret of the Sword, there was the
Well, they were
Horde.
both in it,
Didn't
but
mean to
I'm just
rhyme.
saying. But that was the Horde was from the She-Ra continuity. And,
Yeah.
Skeletor obviously is the He-Man villain.
I always felt like Hordak was like a straight up villain, like dyed in the wool, irredeemable villain. And like Skeletor, like maybe was charmed by that kind of life, but like didn't have it in his heart to be that evil.
To be
That's-
quite super evil.
right. Like he perhaps looked more evil because he had like that
He was a
yellow
skull.
skull for a head, but you could tell his heart really wasn't in it.
Right. Yeah. He was kind of half-ass evil. A lot of those 80s like cartoons like had some really good ones like
They always surrounded themselves with like incompetent
yes, henchmen.
henchmen, right?
Bad
Yeah,
henchmen. Oh, that's where we want to go now. I want to go to bad evil henchmen. Who are some of the worst evil henchmen?
God.
Ooh. I mean, there are plenty of stormtroopers who just straight up can't shoot.
Oh yeah,
No, that's been proven wrong. Because
they were trying to miss.
right, they were,
I know,
They were,
I've heard
they were
this.
ordered by whoever, like Vader or
Vader.
Tarkin, to let Han and Leia and Luke leave because the ship had a tracking device, and that's why the Empire was able to.
Track them back to Yavin 4.
Right.
Okay.
And we've come full circle back to Star Wars.
We can never escape.
We can never escape to Star Wars.
Trying to think of, like,
There must be another franchise. Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
You have
Common
Sauron
Sauron.
and Morgoth, if you read some of the other material.
and
But who
Saruman.
are like villainous, like satanic characters.
Yes.
And they have an army of orcs,
Yes.
which are surprisingly effective, actually.
Yes.
So that is an example, I think, of like a good, like evil army that has to be overcome by the heroes, and the heroes are made more heroic by their defeat. However, one of Sauron's henchmen, Saruman,
Yep.
decides that he wants to be the big bad.
Right.
Covets the ring for himself, actually secretly wants control over all Middle-earth.
Right.
So it becomes an interesting analysis of evil itself.
Oh.
This is actually what we've talked about before on like Dungeons and Dragons, where like an evil party
Right.
is such an interesting psychological experiment.
Right, because it inevitably turns into everyone backstabbing each other and just falls apart into
Right.
chaos.
If you have a bunch of good characters, like, doesn't matter, lawful good, neutral good, chaotic good, they all want something best for the realm. They see
Right.
evil, they notice it, and they want to fight it.
Right.
But an evil party where they're all motivated, all the characters are motivated by their own
Right,
desires.
they're motivated by greed.
An evil party will collapse upon itself, and it's just so
Yep.
fascinating to watch. And it always happens.
It always happens. I mean, you can sometimes have an evil character in a group, and they can sometimes pull it off, particularly if they're like lawful evil or something like that. where, because they can align their goals with the party's goals. But eventually, they're going to stab the party in the back at the end to get what they want.
Right, right.
I mean,
Like Raistlin Majir.
right, like one of my favorite villains, Raistlin. If we're going back to literature. Right, so yeah, where he betrays the party and leaves, and then eventually his whole story arc ends in a redemption arc.
Right.
At the very end. But he's only redeemed when he sees what happens when he wins.
Right. He becomes a god, but because...
During that show, he destroys everything.
Right. Because the desires only fulfill himself, he realizes that he can't create anything.
Right.
He can only be a god of destruction.
Right. Yeah, because Dragonlance has that law that is, good redeems its own, and evil feeds upon itself, and good and evil must exist in contrast. And that's kind of their cosmic law of that world. Well, we are unfortunately out of time.
That was a fast half hour.
That was a very fast half hour. So for Maxie and Jamie, I'm Keith Martin, and this has been OCD TV. Catch you later.